What fact is common knowledge in your field, but almost unknown to the rest of the population? People almost always try to exit through the same door they entered. In a crowded venue, always take a second to find your exit and then find a second exit. Mark them in your brain just in case. In an emergency, most of the crowd is going to go for the main door they came in through. Knowing where another exit is can save your life. Do most restaurants have an exit through the kitchen? Urban heat kills way more people in Australia than bushfires. In the 2009 Black Saturday bushfires in Victoria, 173 people died in the fires, but over 300 died of the heat prior to that. Also, most of those deaths occur at night, not during day. Bamboo as a grass is 100% sustainable, and the plywood made from it is harder than oak, is naturally antimicrobial, is water resistant, stores carbon like a motherfucker and has similar resistance to compression as concrete. Plus pandas like it, edited to add about the pandas. UTIs will often cause confusion in people over 70. ADA, UTI is urinary tract infection, and some people can get confused to the point of hallucinations and delirium. It can cause increased weakness, which also leads to falls. Second edit, according to this study, the confusion and delirium is brought on by the inflammation and immune response involved. I work in the mental health field. Often I'm told a loved one has dementia, Alzheimer's, etc. I will ask about symptom onset and they'll say a couple days or something similar. A round of antibiotics later and the loved one is usually back to their baseline. UTIs in older folks are wild. My elderly mother loses touch with reality when she gets a UTI, right up to and including full-blown hallucinations. When you're taking Imodium, you're actually taking an opioid, but it's designed to only interact with the opioid receptors in your digestive tract to slow down your intestines. Scientists were like, hey, you know that anti-diarrhea medication heroin? Well, what if we made a version of that without the pesky side effects of getting you high? This explains all those commercials from like 5 to 10 years ago for drugs that helped with constipation from being on opioids. Exactly. Those drugs like methylnaltrexone block the opioid receptors in the gut but not in the brain. So basically the exact opposite of Imodium. Genetics, there's a bunch of stuff we don't report back because they're considered incidental findings. This can include genetic diseases with no treatment/mitigation, or non-paternity. If your kid is sick with a genetic disease and you go get genetic testing done for mom, dad and little Timmy, we do not automatically report back if dad is no relation or is actually an uncle. At the same time, in most places you have the right to request your data. Powerful explosives are so insensitive to shock that it usually takes a smaller, more sensitive explosive to set them off. C4 will just burn if put into a fire. Soldiers used it to cook food in Vietnam. Pure C4 also gets you high if you eat it. They started adding a compound into it that makes you violently sick to stop people from doing that. You have to admire the human compulsion to get wrecked. Right? Imagine thinking, I am bored, let me eat a bomb to see what happens, and then getting wrecked. It's usually some nerd that is like, this shit is made out of X, Y, and Z, which isn't poisonous and will get you wrecked, like torpedo juice, which was basically Everclear. If you have sad vegetables, carrot, celery, or lettuce that look wilted, not bad, you can make them crunchy by shocking in ice water. What kind of voltage are we talking? Or by cutting a bit off the stem end and standing them up in a cup of water. Works well for romaine. Bed bugs don't make you a nasty person with a nasty home. An infestation isn't due to a sanitation issue. They're an imported pest, which means they hitched a ride on something you brought into the house. Usually luggage or furniture. Not sure if it's true, but I heard they're more common in expensive hotels than cheap ones, because there are more international travelers. When you go out to clubs or any place with some sort of strip, aka Broadway in Nashville, the volume is 11 times out of 10 too loud. I work at Barstool occasionally as AV, and at night it's gotten up to 110 to 115 dB. For reference, the threshold of pain is 120 dB. We're hearing protection, people. You can't get that shit back. Why do they turn the music up so loud though? It's just fucking annoying. The number one reason I don't like going out. In any given nature documentary, the protagonist animal you're rooting for is played by several different actors, i.e. that one brown bear's story is patched together from footage of a bunch of different bears. And in about 90% of the animal reacting shots, they're reacting to the camera crew. Nature documentaries are heavily constructed. Also, all those amazing close-ups of bugs and small critters burrowing and stuff are done on a set in a studio. Honestly, when you learn about all the work that goes into creating such a documentary, it's even more impressive. I always love the Foley on tiny animals that certainly don't make any noises that can be picked up at the distance the cameras are at. I refuse to believe that one iguana running from all those snakes was multiple iguanas. Little man, woman, ran its little heart out and earned its place in this world. It's funny how almost everyone knows exactly which iguana you're talking about. It's literally the greatest scene ever filmed in the history of cinema. Cement and concrete are not the same thing. Cement is the main ingredient in concrete, but concrete is the whole mixture of cement, sand, aggregate, water, etc. I feel like I relearn this every year. One of these times it will stick. Not your fault. Concrete is hard. A hysterectomy is removal of the uterus only, not the ovaries. The uterus is different from a vagina. I still have a vagina. Meredith Palmer from The Office. I worked with a guy, in his 50s, that thought that it was exactly that. After a woman had a hysterectomy, she was a Barbie down there. A surprising amount of people, including women, have no idea we have 3 holes down there. We do not pee from our vaginas. What's it called if they take uterus and ovaries? Hysterectomy and bilateral oophorectomy. Oof. Add the fallopian tubes for a hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. When a person flatlines, you cannot shock them out of it. Chest compressions. Chest compressions. Chest compressions. Dr. Mike. The point of most loyalty programs isn't to give you points so you'll shop more, though that isn't a bad thing. It's to gather data, i.e. where do you shop, how often, how much do you buy there, what sort of things at what price points, etc. etc. For us marketing types, data is king, even small things like if a cashier asks for your zip code. Source, marketing professor who still actually works in marketing. Lab-grown diamonds cost $2 per CT of electricity to grow. The value price has absolutely plummeted on them the last 2 years. Most especially the last 8 months. Don't overpay on them as they all perform. One CTS currently $600 to $800. So for the first time in the history of the jewelry world, you can officially buy moissanites from high-end brands that are more expensive than their lab-grown diamonds of same quality. The amount of people robbed of value the last 2 years is in the millions, and dollar amount unfathomable. Had a guy as recent as March spend $24,000 on a 3 CT lab-grown online when I was finding them for $5,500 at the time. Places are rushing to make money back from buying in bulk. There will be a documentary about this someday. What are the online shops that I can trust when shopping for lab-grown? I was thinking to get moissanite, but if lab-grown diamonds are cheaper, then that's worth looking into. Volumetrically, most rocks are made of mostly oxygen. Most of the entire Earth, crust and mantle, is also nearly half oxygen, by mass. If you've ever read Oxygen Discovered on Moon, it's rocks. It means they've discovered rocks. That both makes a lot of sense and no sense at the same time. People, users, are the weakest link in most technology systems. 99% of the time. Truth. I fix checkpoint security equipment and explosive detection systems for a living. Fixing the machine that they broke is the job, but showing them what they did to it, why it happened, and what to do in the future, is what makes it possible for me to maintain great uptime on as many systems as I do. In archaeology, it's super awesome and great that you brought stuff to an archaeologist at a local dig site near you of things you found in your backyard or nearby asking us appraise it, but the thing is, we're actually more interested in the context the items are found. We need/want to see the bigger picture. Arrowheads, flint knaps, trade beads, etc. are super cool, but they are worth so much more when we can tell if they are part of a hoard, burial site, ceremonial site, etc. If you haven't, check out the book Kindred. While it is about Neanderthal, it goes into how valuable all the layers of dust around the objects of interest are and how much info they get from it. Blew my mind how archaeology has advanced. Generally speaking, if you add the percentage of the body covered in third-degree burns and the person's age together, you get the likelihood of it being a fatal burn. 32 and 40% burn coverage? About 70% of people in that condition will die. Source, Fiery, working closely with several doctors from burns units. Edit, I love the 100-year-old people comments and the people with 0% burns but in their 30s lamenting the 40% death chance. 100 years old and 0% burn? Sorry pal, that burn is fatal. 101 years old, 0% burns, spontaneous combustion. Most public defenders are competent actually, but extremely overloaded. We'll say this as someone from the other side. I would cringe for defendants when I'd see them spend tens of thousands on a big-name lawyer who's more a salesman than litigator and who would inevitably plead their clients out so they could move on to the next one. Public defenders work with a certain set of cases with certain judges and certain juries every day. They may not always have gone to top-tier law schools, some have though, especially in federal court, but their experience in the forum is invaluable. When I worked as a barista, how much fucking syrup is in flavored drinks? At the cafe I worked at, we measured flavoring by grams. If you got a large mocha, that motherfucker would have like 110 grams of chocolate sauce in it. If you want a little bit of flavor, I suggest only 1 pump. 2 max. I worked as a barista for Starbucks and once had to serve a customer that ordered enough syrup to fill a small cup of coffee. It was truly disgusting. Those high-end or expensive neighborhoods, they slap up really fast. Usually, gated communities and other semi-exclusive suburbs full of McMansions are built with the absolute cheapest materials and poorest quality/untrained labor. Never buy a spec home without some serious research into what you're actually buying. All that luxury is barely surface deep. Daughter of an Australian builder here. Quality long-lasting building materials, think double brick, hardwood roof beams etc., are expensive to produce and in very short supply/utilize a lot of natural resources. So instead they cut corners and use cheaper materials for the bones of the house. Many houses built these days won't last 20 years without major structural issues. Ironic because many builders are still charging premium prices for these heaps of shit. Thank you for watching. Let us know in the comments what fact is common knowledge only in your industry.